The superpower that every citizen has is the ability to control where they spend their time, money, and attention. By focusing these on supporting local businesses, you are having a profound impact on your friends, your family, and your local community. So if you want to change the world, you can start with buying local.
Welcome back, everyone, to Buying Local. I am your host, Mike Nelson. We are a special show today, actually a little real estate roundtable. We're going to talk about some of the trends, some of the market conditions that seem to be ever changing in a very important aspect of our economy and our local community. Joining us today, are three, what I would consider real estate experts. I don't know if I'm using that term liberally, but I don't think so. I think you're all pretty good at what you do, and I know you all personally. We're joined by Dan Wade, Iannello and Anderson. Hi, Dan.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Hey, thanks for being here, man. Dan's been on the show before. Dan's your man, right? If you're buying land, Dan's your man.
That's it.
That's the saying. Also here with, and Mark, I'm going to mess up your last name, but I'm going to try anyway. So joined by Mark Pawlows.
Yeah, that's right.
I got it. I nailed it. Man, I'm getting better at this. With Freedom One Funding, and you guys, Iannello has multiple offices. You guys are Glens Falls, Saratoga, Latham,
Clifton Park, Albany. Yeah, so the 4 locations really make it convenient for our clients to close.
Yeah. So you're all over the capital region, and you guys have multiple offices too, right?
We don't. We did at one point, but
you did.
We have one office in Latham, right off the Latham Circle, centrally located, but our staff is sort of lives in the greater Capital District area.
Yeah.
So we've got most.
You guys are up in Glens Falls, Queensbury area. I mean, you're still covering quite a wide area, and on top of that, I mean, I don't know, are you able to do only New York, or are you able to go into other areas as well?
We're only licensed in New York State at this time.
New York State, but anywhere in New York State.
Anywhere in New York State.
Okay. And then we're here also joined by Paul Smith from Keller Williams, Capital Region. Paul is one of our community partners up at Glens Falls today. Thank you, Paul. Appreciate that. Thanks for joining us. Hot off the operation table. Can you say that? Hot off. It's like hot off the press, but not.
Yeah. I'm glad to be back.
Everybody's used to my really bad jokes, so I will just apologize at a time for all the bad jokes that I make. Well, welcome back, though, seriously. We're glad to have you. And
glad to be here.
Yes, sir. All right, so we're talking about real estate, guys. What, real quick, well, and we'll just this whole thing here, we're going to go left to right? We'll go counter. So you get to sit in the prime seat of hearing everybody else's stuff before they go. But Dan, so a lot of pressure on you, Dan. What's going on in the market? Like, what are you seeing right now?
Right. So, starting first, that's why they pick me the not so big bucks, is so I get to go first. Okay. So, what I'm seeing in the market, and of course, understand that I usually get into the process a little bit later from the actual beginning of the process, where people are starting to look at homes, starting to put offers in on homes, negotiate, and hopefully get their offer accepted. Yeah. Then once that happens, the contract gets signed, and then it comes to me. So that's the point of where I'm sort of jumping into the game. So what I'm starting to see more of is less buyers having to waive inspections to get their offers accepted.
Because that became pretty commonplace during...
It became very, very common, and we understand why it happened, but also as an attorney, it makes me very nervous when I see clients have to do that.
Yeah.
So it does require some additional counseling of them to make sure that they understand what they're getting into and the additional risks that they're taking. But when you have a good team that you work with, real estate agent-wise and otherwise, then you have more confidence that, number one, the client has been counseled about all the risks before they put their offer in, and that they understand what they're getting into, and that they've checked out the property as best they can. So that's one of the things that I'm seeing, is that buyers are not waiving inspections quite as much as they were.
So they're not taking the chances that they were taking.
I think it's that. I also think that because some more properties are coming onto the market, not nearly as much as we need, because the demand is still very high and the inventory is still very low.
Yeah.
But some more properties are coming onto the market, and so when that happens, there's not quite as much of a frenzy with people trying to climb over top of each other to get their bids accepted. Back in the height of things, we were seeing probably anywhere from 15 to 20 offers going in on a single property. within a week's time of the property going on the market.
Yeah.
And so when that happens, everybody is trying to find what's the best way to get the leg up to get their offer accepted. And what ended up happening is a lot of these protections that people normally would build into the contracts to protect themselves, they started sort of giving those up or waiving those. And one of those was the inspections that they would waive. And from the seller side, they loved it because if the inspections were waived, then that's one less thing that the seller has to worry about potentially giving up concessions or credits for things that might need to be repaired in the property.
And Mark, on your side of things with that, did you ever find yourself where you're writing pre-approvals for like the same house?
Absolutely.
Or, like
Sometimes
10 different
3
buyers?
times.
Yeah, that's amazing.
3 different clients that are dealing with me are putting offers in on the same house sometimes. So that is kind of crazy.
How do you deal with that situation? Like, I mean, like I would assume you're not allowed to say anything to anybody.
Correct. It's not something I share with the individual clients.
Yeah.
Typically, they have their own agents, so it's usually not the same agent that's got the 3 different clients or 3 different agents. But it's a little tricky, and if you're looking, what I'm looking at is, out of these 3 clients, which one's realistically going to, have a better chance of getting their offer accepted. There's the customer that's going to put 20% down and is doing a conventional loan, very strong offer. Then there's the clients that are going FHA with a very minimal amount down. They need their closing costs financed into the purchase. That's probably not gonna get accepted in a multiple offer situation. Those clients are having a hard time finding a house these days. Definitely, still a lot of multiple offers, and the first time home buyer price range. If it's a good house and it's in a good area, we still have a lot of clients that are losing, that are not getting houses and are putting in very strong offers at asking price or above asking price and still not getting the house sometimes. So it is still competitive out there. Good school districts, that certain price range. I would say somewhere between like 200 and 300,000 is a really hot price range for people that are, a lot of the first-time home buyers are in that sort of price range. Well, and they're struggling to get their offer accepted. It's really hard. Some of them I've written pre-approvals for 6-7 times where they've before they've gotten an offer, or should I say they've made 6 or 7 offers before they've gotten one accepted. It can be very frustrating for these younger folks trying to get a house for the first time.
And Dan's chomping at the bit, jumping at.
Well,
what do you got?
And just to sort of jump in off of that too, one of the things that does actually help a potential buyer have their offer look more appealing is if they go with a local lender. That actually really does help. People in the industry know what are the more solid lenders to work with.
As opposed to going with like an online outfit.
Right,
that
Rocket Mortgage out of the Midwest, some call center employee that doesn't know anything about the area.
Yeah.
Maybe,
They couldn't tell you the street. They don't know the area. They, no clue.
Yeah. Well, and so you were talking about first-time home buyers in that $200,000 to $300,000 range. I mean, can you even buy a house around here for under $200,000? It's that's where foreclosures are going for, right? These days. I mean, is it?
It all depends.
So
on
most
where
everything you're looking at that's under 200,000, most are in the foreclosure stage or pre-foreclosure. You don't see a lot in that range that are going to be simple sells.
Yeah. They're going to be some quirky properties.
There's going to be some issues typically. I mean, just over the last week, we've had some changes in the market, towards conventional loans of now they're starting to put handrails. They need to exist everywhere, where before in a convention you didn't have to have that.
Like kind of getting to like where that FHA guideline kind of is, where you've got to make sure that all
the banks are making sure that what their investment is more secure. So they're starting to tighten things up, and it's going to be something real estate agents have to take knowledge of, because you're going to need to know that up front, so that way you don't hold your client up if they get an offer accepted because you're waiting for a handrail to be put in or some quirky thing now that they've got some new rules out. So, it's just something you got to look for now. Conventional loans are going to look like FHA loans, I think, here pretty much in the future, where almost everything's going to have to be done the same.
Yeah.
And
are you still seeing the inventory? Because I know like trying to think when you and I spoke back in, God, it must have been maybe February or March.
About March. Yep.
That you were talking about, like you were sitting on like 30 buyers at that point.
I'm still sitting on 31 pre-approvals.
That's crazy. And it's still an inventory issue, though.
Dan is actually working with 2 of my clients, be working with a third here pretty quick.
Yeah.
It's an inventory issue. I mean,
still.
That $350 to $400 range and up is still very difficult. I haven't seen a lot of great homes. I've seen some good homes, but not great homes. I've got people out there that want to list, but I can't get them off the fence. They're waiting. They're like, no, interest rates are high, inflation.
Yeah, and I want to go on to that in a minute too and talk about the Fed and interest rates and all that. But
that 7% has made a lot of people turn their head away right now, saying
that's a big jump in payment from the 3.5% we were at just 2 years ago. Right?
But then I explained to my buyers, when I bought my first house, I paid 13.75, and I had an 800 credit score.
I think mine was 8% or something, 8.5 back in the.
Back in 1990, it was crazy back then. But
what's funny is when we opened up Freedom One Funding, it was December 2002, so a little over 20 years ago. And the prevailing conventional interest rate was around 6.5% then. Mm-hmm. So not a whole lot lower than it is now. And the funny thing is, at that point in time, we had people begging, banging on our door to refinance because so many people were sitting there with 9s and 10s and 8.5s.
Yep.
And I had, grown men in their 40s telling me they never thought they were going to see interest rates that low. And they're not a whole lot different than that now. A little bit higher.
That was cheap money back then.
Right.
Yeah.
But now it's just the mindset is so much different because everybody's so used to those interest rates that got down into the high 2s and the
like
low
in the
3s.
2s. How crazy is that there was mortgage rates in the 2s, right?
And I think an unintended consequence of interest rates going up that certainly I didn't anticipate was the fact that it's going to keep people from listing their house and selling. Yeah.
So
that was something that I never really thought about.
Exacerbating the inventory problem.
Yes, because they're looking, people that want to downsize or upsize, they're looking and saying, okay, let's say I'm going to go find a house, get rid of this big, 4-bedroom, 3-bath colonial, and people are getting older, want to get into a ranch or something that makes more sense as they get older, and drop the square footage, maybe drop $100,000, $150,000 in price. But now they're doing the math sometimes on what the mortgage payment's going to be compared to what they have now, and in some cases it's cost them more to downsize or the same amount, and they're just looking at it saying, well, I think I'll just sit on the sidelines and wait, kind of like Paul was saying.
So that is still a current condition that we have. Is there's still a lot of people that are just sitting on the sidelines waiting for conditions to change, which I mean ultimately. That's the Fed's goal, right? Like, is to keep those people on the side. I mean, they want to, inflation is the too many people, too much money chasing too few goods, and they're trying to slow down that chase a little bit, or a lot for that matter. But a lot.
Yep.
And I think from a recent article that I read that there's no end in sight to that slowing or the raising of the Fed rate. Look, they might do.
That's the way that looks. Yeah.
Yeah, looking like another raise coming down the pike, which is where I want to go next. So from a mortgage standpoint, and we're kind of already talking about it, but what are we seeing there? So we're seeing the Fed potentially raising. I mean, what are rates going at right now for let's say a good, decent credit score?
We're in the low 7s now.
Low 7. That's a good rate
low to
right
mid,
now.
Yeah, like a 7 to 7.25 range for somebody with excellent credit. That's where we're at.
What's your FHA rate going?
Probably right around the same.
Right around the same. Yep. And and FHA still functions as, you can do like letters of explanation and things like that. It's good for first-time home buyers.
It's not as credit score driven, so somebody with a 640, 650 credit score can still get a good interest rate on a FHA loan. For somebody that doesn't have a lot of money, they can get their down payment money from a gift from a relative. They can finance in their closing costs in many cases if they can get their offer accepted with the closing costs financed in, which is a challenge these days. But
I'd imagine that is probably a negative for a selling or a seller, right? They're seeing someone that needs help with their closing costs.
You don't see a lot of concessions right now getting accepted. So
the way that impacts the offer is, let's just use a number. Say somebody's buying a house for, let's say, $200,000, and they need a $10,000 seller concession for closing costs. And the house is, they're offering $200,000. Now they want to write the contract for $210,000 to finance in the closing costs. Well, now the property has to appraise for $210,000. So if it doesn't appraise for $210,000, Now the sellers either, you're looking into the seller to lower their price, and that's the risk to the seller that now, accepting that offer. Now they got to, get a higher appraisal.
I mean, are appraised values an issue? I almost feel like because things were appraising so high, like I remember we got calls about our property was stupid what they were saying they could sell it for, and I'm just like, it's an issue? You're nodding your head like it. Like
well, it hasn't been an issue in the last a big issue in the last I'd say 6 months to a year because the prices have gone up. It was earlier in the process when they were first starting to climb, where your appraisal is chasing that is the price because they've got to use sold houses for comps for comparables, and if those houses haven't sold yet, even though they're going to sell for a higher price, they can't use those. So that was a bigger problem earlier in the cycle. I feel like right now it's not quite the same. I did have a client that underappraised on a house in Gansevoort recently, South Glens Falls School District. Was just under $400,000, high 390s, and it underappraised by not a lot, but like something like $9,000 or $10,000. The sellers gave up a little bit of money. The buyers came up with a little bit more money, and they were
say that's got to come from somewhere. Right?
But sometimes it misses by a bigger amount, and it could kill your deal.
Yeah, jump right in, Dan.
Yeah, I think where I'm seeing that come up as an issue is where you have a multiple offer situation where the seller has listed the price, and sellers will work very, very hard with their real estate agent, and their agent will do a really good job of pulling comps to the area to get a good feel as to what level it should be listed at when it goes onto the market. If it's a good house, though, you're probably going to get a lot of interest on that house. There's going to be multiple offers on that house. And if they drive that price up $20,000, $30,000 above list, that's where we start to see sometimes we have the issue of the property not appraising. And again, it's an education process at the beginning of making sure that the buyer knows that if the property doesn't appraise, there's a chance that they might have to kick some money in to make the deal work if they're willing to bid that price for that property.
It's interesting. And I mean, I guess you guys all would know better than I would, but has that become pretty commonplace of people selling above list price?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Like, I feel like I keep hearing that. Like,
yes.
I hear all these offshoot conversations about people buying homes. And like, well, yeah, we end up spending $50,000 more than the listing price. And I'm just like, really?
Have you heard about an appraisal gap contingency or an appraisal gap addendum? So that's another thing that people are getting creative with on the buyer side to make their offer stand out. So especially when you're going above asking and there's multiple offers, somebody that has some extra money to put down or somebody that's already putting 20% down or more, they can put in an appraisal gap waiver, basically saying, okay, so if the house was listed for $250, we're offering $275, and they might come back and say, okay, we're willing to make up any of that appraisal gap that falls short, as long as it's at least $250. We're not going to go if it appraises less than asking price, but they'll agree to make up that difference. And some cases, if they're putting a big enough down payment down, they can have the same mortgage. The only difference is they'll have some PMI on their payment. They have enough money already that they're putting in for a down payment. They could just take a 20% down loan and it goes to 5% down or 10% down. It doesn't really affect things hardly at all. Makes their offer that much stronger. Now the seller says, okay, I feel good about taking, even though they have a mortgage, they're taking paying $25,000 over. If the house doesn't appraise, they're going to make up the difference. That's fine. I'll take it. So it makes the offer stand out, as long as, it's kind of like one of those tools in the buyer's tool belt, like waiving a contingency, like Dan was talking about, inspection contingency, which is risky.
Yeah.
As an agent, we have to really get creative. Some of these houses that you show in, and they've got 15, 20 people looking at that same house, and this person really wants a house. Like, he's working with a buyer now that, they had quite a few people look at this house, and we got it.
Well, that was going to be, one of the questions is how are you making your buyers stand out to these listings, to these sellers?
So by being a little bit creative in your wording of how you're putting your contracts together,
and how you're presenting their offer. I mean,
and how you're presenting it, and making sure. I mean, I reach out to every agent before I go and show a house. I speak with them. I talk to them about the house. Tell them who I am. I do that. Any house I show, I've spoke to the agent before I go in, and making that contact sometimes is the big thing. The agent appreciates somebody reaching out saying hello and just, we're coming in, we're pre-approved and we're good to go. And, let's see what your house looks like.
I mean, because it really has to be about making, really dressing up your buyer and their ability to purchase that house better than anyone else. I mean, is that what you're trying to accomplish as a buyer's agent? Is that
so? Yeah, as a buyer, on the buyer's agent, yeah, you're trying to make sure you go in strong with a lender, and sometimes it's good if the seller, if they know that they use that same lender, so to speak, and they trust that seller, trust that mortgage company. They're like, you know what, this is a no-brainer, because they might have somebody that's got another offer in, but has got just a single agent mortgage guy that just, he closes 5 houses a year. So they're comparing, so sometimes it comes down to that. You never know, it's.
So it comes down to, if I hear it correctly, who your agent actually is. That matters?
Sometimes I think it really can affect, who gets it. And,
that's interesting. I never really considered that.
We get phone calls from listing agents. I wouldn't say regularly, but once a month I'll get a phone call saying, "Hey, I've got multiple offers on this house. I see you're doing the mortgage for Joe Blow here, and what can you tell me about him?" And with Joe's permission,
I was gonna say, what are the rules around that, right?
I will of course go back and ask the client if they're okay with me giving out. There's certain information that I think they're fine with me giving out.
Yeah.
They have good credit scores, they have a good job, but sometimes I'll get into more detail if the buyer is okay with that, and I think that's really goes a long way. Especially when it's a really strong buyer and borrower, when I can explain that and sort of give the whole picture, paint the picture to the listing agent. Had that just happened recently on a young lady that was buying a house, had an awesome job, 800 credit scores, more money in the bank than she was using for the down payment, so she could make up any shortfall if the appraisal didn't come in, that kind of thing. And they actually took her offer over a cash offer. I don't think the cash offer was quite as high, but I was pretty impressed. And but she was super solid, and she's buying a condo or a townhouse in Saratoga, and she got her offer accepted. Appraisal hasn't come back yet, so we'll see how that goes.
Keep fingers crossed,
exactly.
right?
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, so I think a lot of it is reputation. I think a lot of it is relationship building, partly creative writing, creative thinking. Paul, when you have a decent house come on the market, how many offers would you say are going in on that house? So
just prior to my surgery was my last listing. I got a couple listings coming, but my last listing, I had an open house. I had 42 people through. I had 33 offers.
That's crazy.
Wow.
How do you even weed through all that?
So I literally had in there that I would make the decision by Monday morning. I had to literally reach out to every agent and say, this is going to go a little further than that. This was the Oxford Circle.
Yeah, because don't you have to do a multiple offer disclosure at that point? Don't you have to let everybody know that
I did put that in during the open house. I had to put that online so it was known, and agents were asking, and they knew, and they were literally writing numbers down as they walked out the door.
Wow.
So we actually did get. So I'm unlike some of the agents. I disagree with what some agents are doing out there. They're taking a home, they're looking at it, and I think they're pricing it low on purpose just to bring in multiples, which I'm not a fan of. I've been in business for 35 years. I want you to put your cards on the table.
Sure.
So when I priced up the house that I put on the market, I said to the seller, I'm not going to put this $20,000, $25,000 low and hope that we get $50,000 more. Mm-hmm. I said, let's put it where the market's showing it should be.
Yeah.
And let's go from there. And we still ended up getting $25,000 over asking.
Yeah.
So
with 30 plus offers, that's crazy, man.
It is crazy.
That was a crazy weekend.
Do you, when you're listing properties and you have that much interest, do you set a drop deadline for a best and final offer?
Yes. Yeah. So usually, I'm a fan. I'm not a fan of Sunday open houses. I'm a fan. I love Saturday because that's when I think people are out and about more, and you get more action.
Well, it gives you Sunday to deal with all that.
I've done open houses for other agents that didn't couldn't make open houses. And I said, put it on a Saturday because I won't do them on a Sunday. And they said, why? I said, because you're going to get more people in on a Saturday. I just did one 3 weeks ago, and I had 6 buyers for her. She was like, what did you do? What did you tell them? I said, I know how to sell houses. That's I took them through the bare bones of this house and just convinced them what was here. And they went out and, she got 15 over asking, I believe. So
that's still pretty good.
That's really good.
I keep hearing that trend, man. A lot of over asking.
And so that's the other thing that I see sometimes is where there's been a multiple offer situation and buyers are putting in an offer, they will also sign something called an escalation addendum, which essentially means this is what my bid's going to be, but I'm willing to bid more or so much more than whatever the highest bid is that comes in up to a certain dollar amount. So if you think of it almost like an auction in a way, like
it is. Yeah. So they can do any increment like they want. I kind of try to tell my clients, I'd just like you to put your money at the table. What do you want to do?
Yeah. Right.
I don't want to be going back and forth with the agent for $1,000 every 30 minutes. He's going to call me because the offer's jumping and this. Let's see where do you want to be? Let's see if we can get there.
Yeah.
And
so you accept escalation clauses? There are some listing agents out there that say they won't.
I don't
accept an escalation clause. They'll tell them just to give us your highest and best.
So in the 33, I actually put no escalation clause, best and final. I don't want a numbers game. This is Yeah, I think it mucks the water.
Well, with 33 offers, that's a lot of back and forth with a lot of people.
Here's an issue: if you get that many offers, and 5 of them have escalation clauses, and they're all written up different because some agents write them up very well, and some agents write them up and they're so hard to understand because they don't explain everything to detail. So they're expecting us, when we're looking at them, to understand what they're saying. So here you got to go making a phone call so you understand their offers. You're giving them a fair chance because they didn't write it up correctly. So I'm not a fan of the escalation clause. And I kind of tell my clients that up front when I'm doing a listing. I said, we're going to go for, this is where we're at. If you get over, we'll go best and finals. This is how we'll do it. But I prefer not playing the.
Yeah, I don't blame you. Best and finals sounds good.
When you go to buy a car, you're not going in there and saying, okay, no, 500, no, 1,000, no, 1,500, and just.
They try to do that. They love that game. So let's talk about some other trends, right? So so back 25 years ago, I used to flip houses, right? And then the market went crazy and it was so hard to find them and so hard to make money. And I haven't done any of that stuff in a long, long time. I'm just curious. Do people still flip houses? Are people still doing it? Is there still money to be made flipping houses?
There can be.
Very minimal.
Yeah, but more of what I'm seeing, if people are getting into real estate to invest, is to get rental properties.
Yes.
Because the way that rents have increased more recently over the past few years, rental income can be pretty good. Now, to balance that out, you got the landlord-tenant laws and the way that those were amended in 2019. So there's that consideration to make too.
I was going to ask you that because that was something we had talked about, more rental properties, and the new laws just scare the crap out of me. People, especially during COVID, you could not evict someone.
It was very difficult. It's not as difficult now because the courts have opened up, which is also why we're seeing more foreclosure properties on the market because the courts have opened up in that area as well. But yes, I think really if you're going to get into real estate for investing for rental properties, it's really about knowing how to pick good tenants that you bring into the property so that the property can be preserved and basically you have a good steady flow of income, which is at the end of the day what you want if you're going to invest in real estate.
Yeah, because that's scary. A lot of people that buy investment properties don't always have the best cash flow, right? Especially after the first few years of buying that rental property, and you need that rental income coming in.
So during COVID, what happened is many tenants stopped paying their
Yeah.
mortgage or the rent, And then all of a sudden the landlords couldn't pay their mortgage.
Right.
So then the banks came out with a forgiveness program or whatever where they could defer their mortgage payments for a year or sometimes longer.
Yeah.
And it's that has long lasting effects to the economy and to those people that were affected by that. So a little bit scary. As far as flipping houses and all that, I hope that's not dead, because I did just buy a previous foreclosure in Glens Falls just a couple of weeks ago. Up there working away on it, and
Nice.
I guess until it sells, and
I work for beer,
and
by
the
the
job
way,
is
just so
all
you know.
done.
I'm not very
won't know
handy,
how that's
but-
going to go, but hopefully it goes well.
Nice.
And, just to circle back to the inventory issue that we're talking about before, I know that there has been some ideas thrown around that the government might jump in and try to create incentive programs to try to encourage sellers to sell their homes so that they have, closing costs or moving costs covered for moving from the property that they're selling to where they're going next. Have you guys, Paul or Mark, have you guys heard anything more on those areas?
So they started talking to us a little bit at Keller Williams about it, of these plans coming out and what they think is going to happen. So Mark Weiss, the CEO of Keller Williams Capital District, great man, lots of knowledge. He's figuring, we're looking at January into next year to start seeing changes. The big thing is everybody got surprised this May and June that we didn't get a boost in inventory, because everybody predicted we were going to get a boost in inventory. And instead, it actually literally recessed a little compared to what they thought was going to gain. So we're looking at really a lot of agents dropping out of real estate because they're not.
Well, I bet the mortgage game's thinned right out.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
The agents are giving up because they're sick of doing the multiple offers, and they don't got enough clients. There's not enough houses to sell, so they're not able to make a living. And if they can't sustain, they get out.
I am confused though. The government's talking about stepping in to increase listings to help solve the inventory problem, but the Fed is raising rates on purpose to decrease inventory to slow inflation.
They're working against each other.
Doesn't
right
that
now.
sound? That sounds like that. As soon as you said that, I'm like, wait, what? That sounds completely contradictory to what the Fed's trying to
I
accomplish.
think the feds realized at some point that it may have been a little too fast, too soon. And so now the talk is, what can we do in the real estate area to try to help that
Interesting.
situation? Yeah.
Interesting. What a crazy mess.
I mean, it's crazy because
It is crazy.
you got people out there literally that want to sell their home, but will not come forth yet just because of what's happening. They just will not. I mean, you can't.
That's crazy.
You couldn't offer them a year's worth of free beer, and they still don't want to come out.
I mean, I'll do a lot for a year free beer, guys. So.
I know, that's what you said. That's what I said. Hey.
Beer's expensive, man, especially the good stuff. IPA doesn't come cheap. That's right. So people are still flipping houses, Mark included. Good stuff. It's exciting. I always enjoyed it.
There's some good ones out there. I got a couple of investors that I'm working with. They haven't been excited with a lot of the properties that we've shown.
Yeah.
But it's been a couple of months since I've actually shown.
I imagine the
Some of
world
those.
of flips are probably still viable for people that are doing their own work. Not so much the guys and girls that are paying someone to do the work for them, right? Because now your cost of acquisition, cost to cure, all that fun stuff is, there's not leaving a lot left over, if anything, at the end. But
At the price of materials and everything now, that's not really it's not an advantage.
It's got to be the right house in the right area at the
Yeah.
right price. But kind of like Dan was talking about earlier, foreclosures are starting to have a little bit of a resurgence again. So that should help going down, and fill the pipeline with future, opportunities for people to do that again, because that they really got sort of bottlenecked up during COVID. Nobody was allowed to foreclose. Everything just sat there, and I know some real estate agents have relationships with with banks or with the VA.
So that's interesting. I've actually had 3 banks reaching out to me personally, asking if I wanted to take on
Foreclosures.
foreclosure properties. I've sat back and I've debated. I haven't decided yet. I'm actually Chase is one of them. Chase, Fannie Mae, and I got 2 others I got written down. So I had a bunch of questions, and they've answered all my questions. My next thing, I'll probably have a coffee with Dan because I deal with Dan as my attorney, just to talk to him about what I've talked to them about, just to keep myself in security, knowing of listing those homes. As an agent, I look to hold myself accountable for whatever I'm selling. So when you're selling a foreclosure, it's kind of hard because you don't know what that foreclosure.
Yeah, you're selling it as is, right?
You're selling it as is, and you don't know what it's going to be like when that person moves out and you get to finally walk in that house.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm on the fence. I'm just,
stay tuned, right?
Yeah.
We'll stay on the.
And I have a background in foreclosure, so that will be a very productive conversation once we have that, because yes, of course, foreclosures do come with some of their own risks.
Well, we'll have to circle back to that, see how that shakes out.
Yeah, we'll let you know how that makes out. I just haven't made that decision. As I said, I'm just coming back in, after having open heart surgery. I'm 10 weeks today. I'm feeling good.
You look good.
I'm ready to conquer the world again, so
that's good.
It's
we'll get after it.
We'll get after it.
What so I wanted to ask about flips, and we started talking about rentals because again that was just a scary thing. But are there cash flowing rentals available out there? I mean, with where prices had surged, I was watching the market. And I'm like, there are no properties that you can make money on right now from a rental standpoint, from an investment standpoint, even after you're 20% down, right? So is it coming back around? Is it making more sense for multifamily investors to get back in the game? And when I say that, I guess I really mean not the big guys. Your normal Jack and Jill investor that is, pinching pennies to get that 20% down and have the reserves and everything else they need to be able to get the loan.
Yeah, because I'm still seeing people every once in a while who maybe they've had or held on to a rental property for a number of years and now they're moving out of state. Maybe they're downsizing themselves or retiring.
Yeah.
And so they're looking to drop that property or get rid of that property as they move on to the next chapter of their life. So I'm seeing clients come in that are purchasing those types of properties and sort of taking over a property that's already fully rented or close to fully rented and making it being a profitable and productive thing for them.
I just got I have a buyer that's just got his offer accepted, in the process of doing his mortgage right now for a 3-unit interesting property in Schenectady. It's a 2-family house, and behind it is a single family. They rent out the 2-family long-term tenants, rent by the year or whatever. Have had tenants in there for a long time. And then with the single family behind it, the previous owner was renting that mainly on short-term, like a Airbnb type rental. But they're making a lot of money on the Airbnb, so he's going to try doing it the same way. That's a whole nother, certainly a conversation and topic out there that's been kind of hot too. And there's been a lot of interest in people buying properties. Really, it's very controversial, especially in some of these like resort towns, Lake George and some.
I know the hotels
some of the lakes around.
The hotels hate the PBR. Yeah, right. Like, but. Can you blame people for wanting to do it? I mean,
not only that, but think of the locals that are trying to buy a house for themselves that live in those areas, and that's driving the prices up. And, I think Dan, you wrote an article about that not too long ago.
Yes, he did.
Yeah, I wrote an article about Airbnbs and the pros and cons and of weighing different people's rights or their protections and so that is an interesting thing that has come and how towns are dealing or trying to enforce or trying to limit Airbnbs in their towns. The other area too that I've seen when we talk about rental properties, and younger people are getting into this game where they're buying duplexes and they're living in half and they're renting.
That's what I did. That was my first property. It was great.
Yeah, it's a really smart way to do it if you can get into it at that, especially at that young of an age. Yeah. And that be your first property.
My first one was I was 23. I bought a 2-unit for $85,000, and the downstairs rent paid my mortgage. Absolutely. I had to pay a couple $100 a month for taxes and insurance, and it was great.
Can't beat that. And,
Yeah.
as an owner-occupied purchase on a multifamily, you don't need much money down.
Yeah.
Only 3.5%.
No,
on
that
an
was back
FHA
when you could
loan.
do 106% financing, my man. That was no money down, 6% seller's concation.
Those days are over, my friend.
I think I wrote a $50 check for that whole transaction. Yeah,
You got money back at the close.
I probably did. I definitely bought a couple of properties where that happened too. Is the weirdest thing.
Which there are some of those out there. There's some interesting properties in Saratoga right now. I'm working with a client he's looking to buy a multifamily because his daughter rents in Saratoga. She works in Saratoga. Her husband works. They love it there. Parents from Connecticut. They just had a new baby. They got a 1-year-old and they got a new baby on the way. And the grandparents are like, you need to find us a 2-family because we're going to move them into one.
Yeah.
And they can rent out the top, but when we want to come up in the summer,
Got a place. Got a
they
spot.
Got a place. So that's an interesting client. So working with them back on the market. So looking at 2 families. There's quite a few in Saratoga right now.
I haven't looked in a while, but I was looking at some of the 2 units in Saratoga.
Prices are crazy.
There's some very crazy pricing out there. But there are a couple that are
somewhat reasonable. Almost
so
reasonable. They flirt with reasonable.
They're on the edge. They're right there where they could be, profitable to somebody right off the bat. I mean, like instant. Even if they're moving somebody to the bottom.
Yeah.
Because one of them it's interesting that he said the property in the back. So there's one in Saratoga right now that's a 2-family house in the front with a single family in the back. So,
and I'm sure it's got a sticker on it though.
That's primarily the only time they rent that, and it pays for everything, is track season.
Yeah.
So that's like very interesting to him. So I don't know. We're circling back. We looked at it in June. It's still on the market. So he's thinking of.
It's amazing to me when I hear properties are still on the market. I'm like, I didn't think that happened anymore, but I guess it does.
He's gonna probably put an offer, and I think he's really convinced, but we haven't quite got there, so we'll see what happens. So
we're running out of time. I want to make sure I get you guys out of here as promised. Real quick though, just first-time home buyers. Any words of wisdom for the people out there that are?
Yeah, first things first. Make sure you surround yourself with a good real estate agent who's going to do the research and do the work and build those relationships and give you the best information that you can possibly have when you are looking and shopping and negotiating for a home. You want to work with somebody like Paul who's going to put in that work. And likewise, you want to make sure you have a good lender. You want to have a good local lender. That offer with a local lender on that pre-approval letter is really going to go a long way. And that education process of those 2 professionals before that contract comes to me as the attorney, I can see the difference between one real estate agent team to another real estate agent team, and same with lender to lender. I can see the different in education level that a client gets before they come to me, and so then I'm just able to reinforce that education that they've already had, so that we can set realistic expectations, so that they know how the transaction is going to go, and they have a more smooth and enjoyable process.
Okay.
And the people that come to me, I tell them, don't go out and buy 2 new cars and think you're going to get a mortgage.
You think you would have heard that from the mortgage guy?
That was coming. That was going to be my advice. Don't go out and get an $800 a month.
I literally had a client do that just before I went down. He hooked up with me. We were showing houses. He had plenty of money down. His wife had a hair. She wanted a new car, so he went and bought a new car and a new truck. And
kill the whole financing deal.
He's got phenomenal credit.
Yeah.
Makes great money, but he bought them both cash. So
well, at least he bought them cash and didn't have the credit. I used to have a buddy used to call it buyitis. That people start buying everything they could.
Now he didn't have the funds to buy the houses he was looking at.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, oh shit, clothing costs are X amount.
Oh yeah.
He's like, oh, I didn't realize I shouldn't have done that. I'm like,
I'll sell the truck.
Exactly. So now
can you trade a truck in on a mortgage?
He's now circling back because he's now saved the money to buy the house. So
wow.
It's like I told him, I said, don't go buy anything crazy. I said, you're done. You don't need no toys, right? And he's like, oh no, I don't do that. So
there's like a list that you got to go over with your clients. When
yeah.
of don'ts.
Don't do
things
this.
that you should do. Don't go out and buy an expensive car right before you're about to buy a house. Don't
credit
start
cards.
buying furniture during the process before you even have
Don't
the
run your
house.
credit cards up.
Yeah.
Don't run your credit cards up, and most importantly, don't quit your job like 3 days before the closing. Take another job, because we've seen it all over the years, and people do crazy things.
So, real quick, just want to let everybody know listening where they can find you guys. Dan, if someone wants to find you, how do they get a hold of you?
Yeah, so I'm with the firm of Ionello Anderson, and again, we have 4 offices from Glens Falls all the way down to Albany. They can reach me at the phone number at our firm is 518-371-8888. Our website is ialawny.com. That's for Ionello Anderson, lawny.com. And you can also find me on Facebook, Instagram under my name. I'm happy to take any referral that anybody wants to give me, and I'll chat and have conversation with any client and point them in the right direction.
Use promo code buying local. No, just kidding.
Hashtag buying local.
That's right. Hashtag buying local. Mark, how about you, man? How can people find you if they need you?
So they can find me. Certainly give me a call on my personal cell phone at 518-495-0047. They can look me up on our website, which is freedomone.funding.com with the 1 spelled out, or they can look me up on Facebook.
Awesome. Paul?
So they can reach out to me on my website, which is paul-smith@kw.com, or they can give me a call on 518-361-4388, or they can also find me on Facebook, Instagram, always kind of putting something out there. So I'm open up to any questions they want, and I'm open to any referrals they'd like to send.
Awesome. Guys, thanks so much for coming. I appreciate it. And Paul, an extra special thanks for coming 10 weeks out of surgery. I know it was a major deal, and you're looking pretty good, man. So we're glad to have you back, happy to have you back, and thanks for being a community partner. We appreciate your support, Glens Falls Today, and we'll keep doing what we can. So,
all right, thanks.
Guys, thanks so much for
gentlemen.
coming. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for listening, everybody. Until next week.
The superpower that every citizen has is the ability to control where they spend their time, money, and attention. By focusing these on supporting local businesses, you are having a profound impact on your friends, your family, and your local community. So if you want to change the world, you can start with buying local.